Good morning and welcome to Sunday School. For this Sunday, I'd like you to turn again in your Bibles to the book of Habakkuk, near the end of the Old Testament. And I want to start with revisiting that topic again this Sunday. And while you're trying to find Habakkuk in your Bible, let me give you just a little bit of the background. I don't have time to get into the entire background. We'll see how this goes today. Maybe we'll do a third lesson on Habakkuk. But Habakkuk is writing and prophesying about 6 centuries before Christ. And so he has come after Isaiah. Isaiah is about 100 years before him. And actually, Isaiah touches on some of the things that Habakkuk is dealing with in Isaiah's prophecy. And Josiah, if you remember, I've talked about King Josiah earlier. Israel had good and bad kings throughout its history, just like nations have good and bad presidents, good and bad leaders. It was the same thing for the nation of Israel at that time, or the land of Judah, however you want to look at it, the Israelite people. They had good kings and bad kings. Josiah was a good king. He was followed by a bad king, Jehoiakim, and that's the time at which Habakkuk was prophesying. Things had fallen apart. If you recall, there was a king, and the king he got a letter from the king of Babylon, who heard he was ill, and the letter said, "We hope you get better." And he sent two messengers to him, and the king, when those messengers came, showed him his palace and all the things that he had there. And Isaiah came up to him and said, "Who were those men?" And he explained to them, they came from far away. I didn't realize that I was this important. I showed them the things that we had, and Isaiah was shocked, and he said, "They will come and plunder and take everything that you've got." They were deceivers, and you didn't pick up on it, king. And that's what happened. The Babylonians did come in, and that's what Habakkuk is writing about here. And things had gotten so bad in the land. And I want you to think about what we're dealing with in the country right now. God deals with nations that go bad by bringing in something worse. Another nation, he'll raise up another nation to come in and deal with the nation that had been good but is being bad. And I want you to think about what's happening in our country. As I talk about this, you remember how good things were in 2019. We had the Abraham Peace Accords. This is all before the virus broke out, but we had the Abrahamic Peace Accords, historic, absolutely historic under Trump. Inflation was low, employment was high, highest employment in the history of minorities and blacks. And conversely, lowest unemployment for them. The border was secure. We were a net exporter of energy. We were not importing energy from countries that hate us. And we had tariffs on countries that had previously been taking advantage of us, and their behavior was changing as a result of that. They were paying the price for stealing our technology. And then we had an election. Well, we had a virus, and now we know it was generated by the Chinese in a lab. Our government has now conceded that. There is a Chinese scientist, and actually several of them, saying that it was done on purpose to destroy our economy. And our government reacted by destroying our economy. And then we have an election with an individual that did not campaign, who allegedly got 81 million votes somehow. I'll leave that there, but consider the evidence. And look what we have. We have high inflation. We have unemployment. Businesses can't hire people. You go everywhere, and they're trying to hire people, but people won't work because largely they're still living off of government money that has been passed out. We have record fentanyl deaths. We have people continuing to die from the shots that they took. The stories, the high profile one was the individual that was injured that played for the Buffalo Bills. Fortunately, apparently he has survived. But if you do your research, you'll see mysterious deaths week after week. I was talking to an attorney last month in Hays, Kansas, said boy, my probate, she said this off the record, my probate business has never been better. All of these deaths, I have young people that are dying. And, we don't like to say that as attorneys, but, some people have to deal with that business. And I deal with it as an advisor to attorneys who deal with that business. And I hear it. I see the numbers from the IRS, the number of deaths that are reported because there's a reporting on deaths because of tax returns that have to be filed. And so Habakkuk is seeing all of this happen in his day, in his economy. And let me just read chapter 1 again, and we'll push on into chapter 2. And it starts out by saying, the burden which Habakkuk the prophet did see, O Lord, how long shall I cry, and thou wilt not hear, even cry out unto thee of violence, and thou wilt not save. Notice he's arguing with God, and we can do that, but if we argue with God, God will answer. Why dost thou show me iniquity and cause me to behold grievance? For spoiling and violence are before me, and there are that raise up strife and contention. He said, I want to walk through the streets and not fear for my life. Do you realize that the murder rate per 100,000 people in cities such as New Orleans and St. Louis and Chicago exceed that of Venezuela and Mexico and Colombia? Therefore the law is slacked, and judgment doth never go forth, for the wicked doth compass about the righteous, therefore wrong judgment proceedeth. Behold ye among the heathen, and regard and wonder marvelously, for I will work a work in your days. Now this is God kind of responding to him. I will work a work in your days, which ye will not believe. Habakkuk has said, well, God, why aren't you doing anything? And he said, if I'd have told you what I was going to do, he said, I actually am doing something. But if I told you what I was going to do, you wouldn't have believed it. That's what he says in verse 5. I will work a work in your days, which you will not believe, though it be told you. For lo, I raise up the Chaldeans, the Babylonians, that bitter and hasty nation. And he said, I'll tell you what I'm doing, which shall march through the breadth of the land to possess the dwelling places that are not theirs. The Babylonians are absolutely wicked, awful people. And he said, I'm going to raise them up, and they're going to come and destroy you. They're terrible and dreadful. Their judgment and their dignity shall proceed of themselves. Their horses also are swifter than the leopards and are more fierce than the evening wolves, and their horsemen shall spread themselves. Their horsemen shall come from far, and they shall fly as the eagle that hasteth to eat. They shall come all for violence. Their faces shall sup up as the east wind, and they shall gather the captivity as the sand, and they shall scoff at the kings, and the princes shall be a scorn unto them. They shall deride every stronghold, for they shall heap dust and take it. He's basically saying, I'm going to raise up the North Koreans to destroy the South Koreans, or I'm going to raise up Russia and China. I'm going to put them together and I'm going to teach you a lesson, America, because, you abort your babies and you have all of this, 56 different genders. No, you legitimize these types of marriages. You do everything that's evil in my sight. Okay, I will raise up even more wicked people, China, wicked nations, China and Russia, and I'll bring them against you. That's what he's saying here. Then shall his mind change in verse 11, and he shall pass over and offend, imputing his power unto his God. And then Habakkuk responds, art thou not from everlasting, O Lord my God, mine Holy One? We shall not die, O Lord. Thou hast ordained them for judgment. And Almighty God, thou hast established them for correction. And here's his argument. He continues his argument. Said, thou art of purer eyes than to behold evil, and canst not look on iniquity. Wherefore lookest thou upon them that deal treacherously, and holdest thy tongue when the wicked devoureth the man that is more righteous than he? He's saying, how can you do this? How can you bring more evil onto us? So he starts out by saying, you're doing too little. Why do we suffer? Why do bad people suffer? And God answering and says, yeah, they'll suffer. I'll bring the Babylonians. And now he switches it, and his argument is, well, wait a minute, that'd be too much, God. God, you do too much. Don't do that. Why use worse to punish bad, is what he's saying. And God answers him. He said, the good will survive. The worst will suffer. That's what he says. But notice Habakkuk's argument. Well, wait a minute, God. Your eyes are thou art of pure eyes than to behold evil. You can't look on iniquity. Now, don't misunderstand that. I've heard preachers misconstrue that, to take that out of context. God sees all the iniquity in the world. He sees every rape. He sees every child molestation. He sees every drug user. He sees every adultery. He sees every fornication. He sees every murder. He sees everything. His eyes have to look upon it. We can look away. We can try to ignore it. Hear no evil, see no evil. God's not like that. But that's Habakkuk's argument. So don't take an argument made by a prophet when he's having this conversation with God. Do not take that out of context. And makest men in verse 14, or wait, let me finish 13. Wherefore lookest thou upon them that deal treacherously, and holdest thy tongue when the wicked devoureth the man that is more righteous than he, and makest men as the fishes of the sea, as the creeping things that have no ruler over them. They take up all of them with the angle, they catch them in their net and gather them in their drag. Therefore they rejoice and are glad. Therefore they sacrifice unto their net and burn incense unto their drag, because by them their portion is fat and their meat plenteous. Shall they therefore empty their net, not spare continually to slay the nations? So Habakkuk's waiting for an answer. We get into chapter 2. And look what Habakkuk says here at the start of chapter 2. Okay, God, you're going to do all this stuff? Huh. I'm going to go sit on a wall, like Humpty Dumpty. I'm going to go sit on a wall and watch and see if you do this. I bet you won't, is what Habakkuk is saying. So he gets there in chapter 2, verse 1. I will stand upon my watch and set me upon the tower, and I'll watch to see what he will say unto me, and what I shall answer when I'm reproved. And the Lord answered me and said, now, Habakkuk, you understand your purpose. And this is the purpose for every Christian. God gives people gifts to use to help other people, not for your own sake. He said, get off that wall, Habakkuk. Write the vision and make it plain upon tables, that he may run that readeth it. So put these signs up. Write it out. People that are passing by, going to the marketplace, so they can see what it is that I'm saying. Publish it. Put it on Twitter. Put it on Facebook. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come. It will not tarry. Behold, his soul which is lifted up is not upright in him, but the just shall live by his faith. Yea, also because he transgresseth by wine, he is a proud man, neither keepeth at home, who enlargeth his desires as hell, and is as death, and cannot be satisfied. But gathereth unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people. Shall not all these take up a parable against him, and a taunting proverb against him, and say, woe to him that increases that which is not his? How long? And to him that ladeth himself with thick clay. Shall not they rise up suddenly, that shall bite thee, and awake that shall vex thee, and thou shalt be for booties unto them? You didn't know booties was in the Bible, did you? Because thou hast spoiled many nations, all the remnant of the people shall spoil thee, because of men's blood, and for the violence of the land and of the city, and all that dwell therein. Another second woe. Woe to him that coveteth an evil covetousness to his house, that he may set his nest on high, that he may be delivered from the power of evil. I want you to see there are 5 woes in here. And woe, when God uses the word woe, it means curse. Don't ever say woe to somebody. So he said in verse 6, woe to him that increases that which is not his. Injustice. We come down to verse 9. Woe to him that coveteth an evil covetousness to his house, that he may set his nest on high, that he may be delivered from the power of evil. Imperialism. Don't take other people's stuff. Don't conquer another person's land or their country. Thou hast consulted shame to thy house by cutting off many people. Thou hast sinned against thy soul, for the stone shall cry out of the wall, and the beam out of the timber shall answer. Third one, woe to him that buildeth the town with blood, and established the city by iniquity. Inhumanity is what that is. Behold, is it not of the Lord of hosts that the people shall labor in the very fire, and the people shall weary themselves for the vanity? For the earth shall be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord, as the waters cover the sea. Next one. Woe unto him that giveth his neighbor drink, that putteth thy bottle into him, and maketh him drunken also, and thou mayest look on their nakedness. Intemperance is the fourth one. Drunks. The Babylonians were awful alcoholics. We can see that throughout the Bible. Terrible. Thou art filled with shame for glory. Drink thou also, and let the foreskin be uncovered. The cup of the Lord's right hand shall be turned unto thee, and shameful spewing shall be on the glory. For the violence of Lebanon shall cover thee, and spoil of the beasts which made them afraid because of men's blood, for the violence of the land and the city and all that dwelleth therein. What profiteth the graven image that the maker thereof hath graven it? The molten image and the teacher of lies, that the maker of his work trusteth therein to make dumb idols. See how bad things were? And the fifth woe. Woe unto him that saith to the wood, awake, to the dumb stone, arise, it shall teach. Idolatry. That's what he's saying there. That's the fifth woe, because it's laid over with gold and silver, and there's no breath at all in the midst of it. But the Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth keep silence before him. So he's announced the doom of the coming of Babylon, pronounces the series of these woes, and he tells Habakkuk, go tell the people what's going to happen. Don't keep this to yourself. Warn them. Be a voice crying out in the wilderness. Okay. Habakkuk, you're complaining I do too much. But what he says here, and I want to go back to, and I forget where it is, verse 4. The just shall live by faith. That's another one. I've heard ministers misconstrue that all over the place. The just shall live by faith. In fact, that's the Magna Carta of the Protestant Reformation. Martin Luther took that verse out of context and totally misconstrued that. What he's saying, the proper translation of this is that the righteous shall continue living because of their faith. Adam Clarke hits the nail on the head in his concordance or his discussion of this text. That's what that means. When you hear people say, I'm saved, yeah, I believed once. Well, big deal. Where are you going to be at the end is what that matters. Will you go on continuing in the faith? You know, if you've ever read John Bunyan's Pilgrim Progress, if you haven't, I would suggest you do that. Pilgrim's on this journey with his friend, and they come up to the Jordan River, and they have to cross the Jordan River to get to the celestial city, to get to paradise. And there's a side road right at the end. And his friend says, you know, I don't want to go through that water, that muddy water. I'm going to take this side road. That side road goes to hell. And they go all the way through their life, the idea that's being conveyed. You can go all the way through your life, but at the very end, you can still lose it. So you're not saved until you get to heaven. At the moment of salvation, you're on the path to being saved. You must stay saved throughout your life. And that's not tied back to one event where you made a connection. You had belief, you had faith that was expressed one time. No, that's how ministers screw this up. The just shall live by faith. What that means is the righteous shall continue living by their faith. And what God is telling Habakkuk here is, look, you stay faithful to me. You will survive this onslaught. Believe in me, trust in me. Don't lose your faith. Continue living in your faith, and you will be saved. That's what that means, and that's the lesson for us today. That's all I have time for today. Maybe we'll pick it up, but maybe I should do a third one on this just to elaborate a little bit more. But I want you to write this down. The proper translation of the just shall live by faith is that the just shall live by keeping faith with the Lord. That's what that means. The just shall live by keeping faith with the Lord. You know, the story was told, I'll close with this, story was told of a man who was asked at he and his wife's 70th wedding anniversary, how they stayed together so long. And he said, he was asked, did you ever consider divorcing her? And he said, absolutely not. Murder? Yes. Divorce? No. Kept the faith. So the just shall live by keeping faith with the Lord. May God bless you in the service to follow, and blessings be upon Brother Merle as he brings the morning message to you, and we'll see you next Sunday.